Hi, and welcome to That's Ready Mysterious. Join me for an intriguing look into real-life mysteries. Who was the mad gasser of Mattoon? What was whaling at the Wilga waterhole? I'm not going to solve those mysteries, but they'll be interesting to learn about. I'm your host, Kelly with an I. Transcripts and references for all episodes can be found at that'sreadymysterious.wordpress.com. No apostrophe and no exclamation point. Today's tale is about the Pittsburgh ghost bomber. At the height of the Cold War, a B-25 Mitchell bomber crashed into the Monongahela River on January 31, 1956. What happened to it after that? The bomber, flight number 44-29125, took off from Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada on January 30th. William Dotson was the pilot. He was accompanied by 4 other crew members and 2 passengers. Captain John F. Jameson and Captain Steve W. Tabak, also pilots, were aboard the flight. Staff Sergeant Walter E. Soucy and Airman 2nd Class Charles L. Smooth were crew chiefs. Captain J.P. Ingram and Master Sergeant Alfred J. Ellman were listed as passengers. The flight was to be a routine training flight. They were to pick up a cargo of airplane parts at Olmsted Air Force Base in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and deliver the 2 passengers to Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland. On January 30th, the plane took off from Nellis Air Force Base and stopped at Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma. They requested a diversion to Tinker instead of Selfridge near Detroit, Michigan, where they were supposed to stop due to reports of ice on the runway at Selfridge and some brake trouble they were experiencing. At Tinker Air Force Base, the B-25 was fitted with a new right brake assembly and left outboard brake assembly. They refueled with an additional 560 gallons of 100-octane fuel, which put them at a total of 975 gallons in the tanks. The flight resumed on January 31st. The B-25 took off from Tinker Air Force Base and flew to Selfridge. Jameson was the pilot on this leg, and Dotson acted as co-pilot. At Selfridge, there was a bit of a traffic jam, and it would take 3 hours before they would be able to refuel. The crew calculated that there was 375 gallons in the tank, which would last for 3 hours of flight time. Olmsted Air Force Base was only 1 hour and 40 minutes away. They decided to go on without refueling. Flight number 44-29125 departed from Selfridge with Dotson as pilot and Jameson as co-pilot. Tabak stayed behind. The flight was uneventful until they reached the Butler radio beacon. They were about 70 nautical miles, or a little over 129.5 kilometers, northeast of Greater Pittsburgh when something happened. There is a redaction in the report at this point. At about 4 p.m., the plane began losing fuel. They were about 30 nautical miles, or a little over 55.5 kilometers east of Greater Pittsburgh. They requested a landing at the Greater Pittsburgh Airport, but soon realized the fuel wouldn't last that long, so they sent out a mayday call. They also asked to land at Allegheny Airport, which was 15 nautical miles, or a little over 27.75 kilometers from their current location. The fuel was decreasing too quickly, so quickly in fact that the airplane was beginning to lose altitude. At 4:11 p.m., the fuel was totally gone and the engine began to malfunction. That's when Dotson realized they would have to land in the Monongahela River. They crash-landed not far from the Glenwood Bridge in Hayes. At this point, the river is 800 to 1,000 feet, or about 244 to 305 kilometers wide, and 25 to 35 feet, or a little over 7.5 to a little over 10.5 meters deep. The current was estimated to be about 8 to 10 knots, or about 4 to 5 meters per second. The water was 34 degrees Fahrenheit, or a little over 1 degree Celsius. All 6 people aboard the plane survived the initial crash into the river. However, only 4 were pulled from the river. At first, they floated with the plane for 10 to 15 minutes until it began to sink. They tried to swim to a log. Alleman, Smith, and Dotson made it to the log. Dotson and Smith stayed with the log until they were recovered 15 minutes later. Alleman swam to shore where he was helped ashore by bystanders. Jamison swam to a wooden post and used it to stay afloat until he was rescued. 2 drowned while attempting to swim to shore. Neither Captain Gene Ingram nor Staff Sergeant Walter Susie survived the swim. Their bodies were found months later. In the hours after the crash and rescue, the Coast Guard cutter Forsythia clipped a wing of the B-25 while dragging its anchor. The plane was submerged. It slipped and was never seen again. The search effort continued for 2 weeks, but the plane was not recovered. The B-25 bomber was 15 feet or 4.5 meters high, and the river was only 20 feet or a little over 6 meters deep. Because it seems implausible that they would be unable to find this plane in this river, since the crash there have been a lot of conspiracy theories surrounding what may have happened. The first is that the airplane was carrying dangerous and mysterious cargo, and the United States military secretly recovered it. Some believe the bomber was carrying a nuclear weapon, or because of the flight's origin, that it was carrying an alien from Area 51. Some say the plane was carrying Soviet agents or Las Vegas showgirls on their way to D.C. Some say that they saw pieces of the airplane being carried away. Some eyewitnesses claim to have seen 7 men in the water, not 6. There are people that say they saw the plane rescued and missing a wing and carried away in a flatbed truck. In 1976, a whistleblower came forward to say he was one of the drivers of one of those trucks. More recently, a group called B-25 Recovery Group used sonar scans and remote-controlled cameras to search the river. They found no evidence of the plane. Andy Masick, CEO of the Heinz History Center, said, "We know where every Ford pickup truck, barge, and shopping cart is down there, but we don't know where that plane is." Masick explained that when the Heinz History Center was putting together their Ghost Bomber collection, they spoke with Major Dotson. Masick explained that it changed our opinion on what the tone of the investigation ought to be. He went on to explain that the story has turned into a sort of fun ghost story for the people of Pittsburgh, but to Dotson it's not fun. He lost 2 crew members and never wanted to talk about it again afterward. What happened to the B-25 bomber that crash-landed into the Monongahela River on January 31st, 1956? How could such a large plane just disappear? What do you think? Leave a comment and let me know what you think. Thanks for listening to today's episode of That's Ready Mysterious. Join me next week for another captivating mystery.